Sounds like somebody's driving.
All right, everyone, and welcome. This is part two of to Sing and Chant while singing and chanting. This will be Vespers part one, where we'll discuss Blessed is Our God at the beginning, all the way through Oh Gladsome Light. Thank you to everybody for registering, letting us know what to expect you, for being here. Our two presenters tonight will have Father John El Masih, who you should all know, hopefully from he's been doing these presentations quite a while. The internet in his home was not as good as he would have wanted it last time, so he is actually out in public right now. So occasionally you'll hear a little bit of road noise as people drive by, but he's got a great signal. So thank you, Father John, for going above and beyond to try to give
Oh,
us a great
please,
group.
sorry. I have to apologize.
It's
But
fine.
we live in the middle of nowhere in Virginia. A lot of good things about Virginia, except in our county here is no high-speed internet. So,
And then we also have Greg Abdullah, who will be presenting as well. He is he's not in the Virginia area. He's all the way out in Arizona. So while Deacon John is probably freezing, Greg is probably nice and warm.
Oh yeah, we got the desert, baby.
So with that, I will turn the floor over. Oh, just as a reminder, if you have questions, please use the chat feature. We will try to bring those out as much as we can without being too disruptive to the presenters. They'll be monitoring it, and we'll be monitoring, and periodically we'll answer questions. So do please use the chat feature. You should have all received a copy of the handout tonight in your email if you were registered ahead. If you did not receive that in the chat, the very first thing in our chat tonight, Greg has shared with us the handout for tonight, so you can download it directly from the chat so that you'll have it. If anybody has any issues or problems, go ahead and send me a private message on the chat. Otherwise, feel free to ask your questions to the group through the chat feature. All right, so I'll go ahead and hand off the presentation to Father John and Greg.
well, good evening, everyone. Welcome again to our second session of what to chant and sing when chanting and singing. I always get the pleasure to work with my brother Greg, who is much needed and stuff like this. I really enjoy just listening to what he always has to say about stuff like this. Tonight, like you saw, and as you know, we're going to start with the first part of the Vesper service. Mainly, we will look at the Great Vesper service, how it's done on a Saturday. This first part will be from, like Chris said, from the beginning of Blessed is Our God till a gladsome light included. We thought it's like kind of the easy part, if we can, if we can say, because the second part, it gets a little bit more complicated. In this session, we're not like the title says, we're not here to teach how to chant. It's not. It's more about what to chant and how these different things change in those different parts, how they come to be. We will be, of course, even if you missed our first session, that's fine. But definitely, especially in the beginning, we will be relying on the things that we took 2 weeks ago. We offered 2 weeks ago. Greg and I, we can say very few things about the stuff that we covered 2 weeks ago, our first session. But even if you joined us for the first time, we'll make sure that you get the idea of what we're trying to tell you. Okay, and I hand it to Greg if he wants to say first anything before, and then he can start.
So we'll be talking about things, as Father John said, the beginning part of Vespers, and we'll be looking at things within the context of this upcoming Saturday's Vespers service. We have the blessing in our archdiocese that our departments of liturgics and translations is putting up the services online. So we will be looking at the online text for this coming Saturday, just kind of as the context within which we'll be looking at where everything is coming from to make Vespers happen the way it happens. But to start, we start with the question, what is Vespers? What is it that we're even talking about? Vespers is the evening service that literally means evening. The word for evening in Greek is esperas. And as we looked at last week, this takes place at the evening around dusk. It focuses on creation and the glorification of God with its general themes. And it is the beginning of the new day. So each day liturgically begins with Vespers. Vespers is kind of the first service of that cycle. And specifically Saturday night's Vespers is the beginning of the new week as well. Since Sunday is the first day of the week, as we hear in the Gospel of Mark, Kyriaki Imera, it is the very, very beginning of the week when the women came early to the tomb. That beginning of the week starts on Saturday night with our celebration of the Vesper service. Most of the practice of Vespers as we have it today is mainly coming from, if you remember when we looked last week at the idea of the typikon, this bringing together the monastic and the city practice. The majority of what we understand today in our Vesper service comes from monastic practice, and it uses elements from, if you remember all of the books we talked about, the Orologian, which is the book of the hours, the Evchologian, which is the service book for the clergy that has all of the clergy's parts, and the Horologian and Evchologian, if you remember, go together as kind of a brother and sister or a mommy and daddy for all of the different church services. And then you have the Ochtoichos, Menaian, Triodian, or Pentecostarian, with different elements that we'll see as we look at the service in depth, coming from all of these different places. Anything to add, Father?
No, God bless you. No.
We also will be looking, since we're looking at it within the context of Saturday night, we will be looking primarily at Great Vespers. But as things come up, we'll also talk about slight variations that you might see in some service books, or if you're reading books about the divine services, different things that would happen if there were, first to say, a daily Vespers, or things that might happen in some other practices. Just so we know generally what's going on, we're going to be looking, though, specifically at what we do Saturday night.
Yeah, apparently used to be a fabric.
And first thing that you notice when you open those liturgical texts online is the first thing that you're going to see is the heading. Just like anything that you see, whether it's in a book or a letter that you might be writing or anywhere, there's a heading. And there are elements within this heading that point to us to understand what's coming on. First and foremost, the heading says Great Vespers. So we know that we're going to be celebrating Great Vespers, not daily Vespers. This one particularly happens on Saturday, September 19th, 2020. And it is, the tone of the week is tone 6, which is going to have elements that it dictates to us as we look more in depth, specifically when we get to some of the movable sections of the feast. It also, underneath it, has the commemoration. So you see first the after feast of the elevation of the Holy Cross. As we know, yesterday we celebrated the feast of the exaltation of the precious and life-giving cross, or elevation. We are in that festal season all the way until we have the leave taken. So this coming Sunday is the after feast of the elevation of the cross. You might also see it referred to as the Sunday after the exaltation of the cross, or elevation of the cross. And then underneath you see a list of saints who are the various saints who are commemorated on that day, specifically for September 19th.
Well,
every year.
Don't forget, no, this is for September 20th. The Vesper service is
yes,
on actually,
sorry.
Yeah, not a problem. The actual Vesper service is taking place on Saturday, which is in the secular world, if I can say. It's September 19th, but it's actually in the liturgical world, in the liturgical calendar. It is this Saturday service is for the Sunday, the 20th of September. So the after feast of the elevation of the Holy Cross, it's for the Sunday of the 20th, and great martyr Eustathius and his family, venerable martyr. You're reading on the those in the bottom. Those saints are celebrated on the 20th of September. Just also maybe we can mention in general the difference between, or when we do great Vespers and when we do small Vespers. Usually the rule is on Saturday, every Saturday, and every feast day of Christ, or the Theotokos, Virgin Mary, or any of the major saints, like Saint, depending on their rank, especially the higher rank saints like Saint John Chrysostom, Saint John the Baptist, Saint Peter and Paul, Saint Nicholas. They get a great Vesper service. But saints like not high in rank, like the ones at least I mentioned, they get a what's called the daily Vespers. And like Greg said, we will try to, at least in the first part that we're gonna discuss, actually not a lot of changes, only like a couple of things that they might be different, but we'll definitely talk about the difference in the literal and the regular daily Vespers and the great Vespers when we talk about the second part of Vespers, where we're going to see those main differences between those two. In general, what we're going to talk about, in the end, we're telling you, hopefully in 2 hours, we can tell you as many things as we can. A lot of things will be general things. In the Byzantine world, that's something probably you need to, accept, know and accept. There are a lot of rules, but also there are a lot of exceptions to these rules. So there are practices that we actually, we do, but then, in this place here, we might do something slightly different just because somehow in some point in history, it got developed to, So that being said, we can definitely continue. Greg, unless you have something else to say at this point.
No, I think that's great. Thank you. And as we said last week, the tone of the week shifts at Vespers on Saturday night and then dictates things throughout the whole. So that's why you see that tone 6 listed after the date. We begin Vespers with the phrase, "Blessed is our God." And then immediately we go into "Come, let us worship," and followed by Psalm 103 and the great Ectenia, which you might also see if you're reading, referred to the great Synapti, which "Come, let us worship" is kind of, I like to talk about "Come, let us worship" as it is our invitation for all of us at some point in almost every single Orthodox service. You are going to see at some point the phrase "Come, let us worship." Even in the Divine Liturgy, we sing "Come, let us worship" as the entrance hymn, which I'll talk about in depth when we get to Divine Liturgy, because I love "Come, let us worship." There's a comma there. So any grammarians know, like, "Come, let us worship." It's an invitation. It's something that we have to respond to. And if we are going to respond to that, then there are certain things that we do. In Vespers, if we respond to this "Come, let us worship," then what we are responding to is that we are going to be taken on a journey. And that journey is going to take us through this beautiful way that the service guides us and leads us to understand creation in very specific ways, and to be taught what it means to glorify God and what it means for all of creation to glorify God. And to summarize that for us, perhaps in the best way possible, we begin with this psalm of introduction, as we call it, Psalm 103. "Bless the Lord, O my soul. O Lord, my God, thou hast been magnified and exceedingly." And it goes on, and I only included the first half, the first paragraph, because there wasn't enough space on PowerPoint, and we wanted to have the whole thing. And then it ultimately ends with this exclamation of "Glory to the Father, Alleluia," 3 times. "Glory to thee, our God and our hope, glory to thee." Practically speaking, there's a couple different ways that we can do that, but we're not going to get into all of that. That's the ending. That is the final way. That is also kind of the cue that our clergy know that we're done. It's kind of written in there. If you see it here, you'll see it when we talk about the 6 Psalms of Orthros. It's kind of like written in as just part of the heartbeat of the divine services, so that the pacing is able to go on and people know what's coming next, and everyone knows what their cues are and where to go from there. Anything to add, Abuna?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I just want to add a few things. Like I said in the beginning, there is so much that we can talk about, and I hope it's not like we're trying to hammer you with so many things, but there are things that it's good to know, you take whatever you like from whatever we're offering you. As you noticed, and Greg said, it starts. The service starts with "Blessed is our God, always, now, and ever, and unto ages of ages." Although that is not a beginning that we usually hear at the beginning of the Divine Liturgy. At the Divine Liturgy, we usually say, "Blessed is the kingdom." Why at the Divine Liturgy we say, "Blessed is the kingdom," but at Vespers we say, "Blessed is our God"? It just, as a rule of thumb, whenever there is a Divine Liturgy or communion to be given, usually you start with "Blessed is the kingdom." But because Vesper service does not have, you're not offered communion, so that's why you'll, it starts with "Blessed is our God." But now you can say, well, we hear "Blessed is our King," "Blessed is the kingdom," when it's
Vesper liturgy.
Vesper liturgy, sure, but also sacraments. If you notice, if you keep attention to the wedding service and to the baptismal service, it will say at some point in the service, "Blessed is the kingdom of the Father and of the Son of the Holy Spirit." Why? Although there's no actual communion, like the priest is not working with the communion, like we have on Sunday or in Divine Liturgy, but actually because those 2 sacraments were part of the Divine Liturgy. They were, for somebody to be baptized, is actually the service was part of it's incorporated with the Divine Liturgy at different parts. In the beginning of the liturgy, you might do part of the baptism, and the same thing with the matrimony service. But anyway, I just wanted to point out that "Blessed is our God" usually for prayers and services that does not include, it's not including communion or sacrificial lamb and all of these things that we kind of see during the Divine Liturgy. Did we say, Greg, that we talk about what happens if it's a Bright Week? We should talk about Bright Week and
Bright Week, and as well as the period of the Pentecostal.
Sure. So, like Greg said, come let us worship. Come let us worship. And the Psalm, 90%, I would say, 95% or 97% of the time, you're going to have this, come let us worship and bless the Lord for every single Vesper service you would have. Those 3% left that I said 97, except during a Bright Week, basically the Vesper service that you're going to have from Monday, Bright Monday, or actually on Agape Vespers on Sunday, the day of Pascha, to the Saturday of Thomas Sunday, you are not going to sing either "Come Let Us Worship" nor "Bless the Lord." You're going to replace those 2, "Come Let Us Worship" and "Bless the Lord," with "Christ is Risen." It's actually chanted 10 times, 3 times first, and then 4 times after each of the verses. "Let God arise," and then 1 after "Glory to the Father," 1 time "Christ is Risen" after both now, and then the last time. 10 times total. But from Vespers of Thomas Sunday till the leave taken actually of Pascha, instead of "Come Let Us Worship," you're going to sing "Christ is Risen" 3 times, but you will read the Psalm. The Psalm is read from then, when from the Vespers of Thomas Sunday. Okay. One thing also I wanted to mention, during any Vesper service outside of Bright Week, like I said, and the Paschal service, Paschal season. Some people might, if you go to a Russian church, they might start with "Blessed is our God, always now and ever, and unto ages of ages," and then they might say, actually, "O Heavenly King, comfort of the Spirit of truth, who art in all places," and then Holy God 3 times, and then, all Holy Trinity, and our Father, and then the exclamation, "For thine is the power and the glory," and and then you go 12 times, "Lord have mercies," and "Come let us worship," and then the psalm. But this not including here, because you're assuming that you do the 9th hour before it. If you're doing the 9th hour that we talked a little bit about 2 weeks ago, you do that part, "O Heavenly King," Holy God 3 times, the All Holy Trinity, the Lord's Prayer. You'll say all of these the beginning of the 9th hour, so you do not need to repeat them at the beginning of Vespers. But also, it became this like Byzantine tradition thing, if I can call it tradition, that even if we're not doing 9th hour, people just start, or churches, a lot of people who follow the Byzantine tradition, they just go, even if they're not offering the 9th hour right before Vespers or at some point during the day, they would just start like this, the way you see it on the screen. "Blessed is our God, come let us worship." I'm not here to tell you like which one is right and which one is better, or which one is wrong and why you should do this, or your priest should do this or should do that. But my job is to tell you what's out there, and then it's up to the discretion of your priest or the bishop to do what he wants. There are two, if I can call, traditional things to do, and this is what it basically I said. Okay, this is all I wanted to say. Great.
One other thing to make note of is, if you are celebrating Great Vespers and you have your local bishop or a visiting bishop with you, it is always good for you to check with him before you start the service, if you are the one leading the service, and ask him if he will be reading the psalm. Mm-hmm. Because technically the reading of the psalm belongs to the bishop. And where that tradition comes from is in monastic practice. If you go to a monastery, you'll see that the senior most clergy will be the one who reads that psalm, unless they are serving. So if the abbot is serving the divine liturgy, the next senior monk will be the one to read it. If the abbot is not serving the Vesper service, then the abbot is the one to read that service. Coming from that tradition, understanding that bishops are typically chosen traditionally from the ranks of monastics, and coming from specifically the ranks of abbots and archimandrites, which are abbots of multiple monasteries at once, then that practice manifests itself in, you see it like an archdiocese convention when we have all of our bishops. Metropolitan Joseph will tell which one of the bishops is going to read the psalm that day. Because at Vespers every night, one of the bishops will read that psalm. Exactly. Also, at the end of the Great Ectenia, something that we do not do in the Antiochian Archdiocese, but you might see in some other places, or you might see in older versions of the camp service book from the Antiochian village, is following the Great Litany. There would be the singing of, at Saturday night, selections from the first Kathisma, and then a little Ectenia after that. That is sung before we get to the next part of the service. Where that tradition comes from is the entirety of the book of the Psalms is divided into, it's collected in a book called the Psalter, and the Psalter is divided into kathismata, which are sections which group multiple psalms together. And each day of the week, each service of the week, I should say, has a specific kathisma that is assigned. So during the entire course of the week in a monastery, you would see the entirety of the Psalter read. Saturday night, because it is the beginning of the week and it is the beginning of the new day, starts with Kathisma 1. So you might hear this "Blessed is the man" sung in specifically in OCA practice or Slavic practice, selections from the first Kathisma. And it's not even the full reading, it's just little points here and there. You might also see in some situations at the end of the psalm something sung called the Anaxandaria, which is more of a Byzantine practice. And what it literally means is it starts with the words, when thou openest thy hand. And it comes from a practice of monastic life where you're in church all night long, and, you know, you're extending the services as long as you can. So you have this very, very long hymn that gets sung where we very ornately sing the last part of Psalm 103 and even add other verses into it. But typically on a Saturday night, we do not see these things. And my recommendation to you is I would not add these things in if you want to elongate the service because you see that your bishop is coming. Any of these things, you know, like we said last week, you need to always be doing these things in good order, which is making sure that our clergy, you're only doing things with the blessing of the clergy or with their understanding, you know, so that everything is done the way that it needs to be done.
Well, you know, just to add a little bit just about the Alexandrian, somebody, you know, just posted a question about it. It is not just like it's a hymn, you know, it is like Greg said, it's literally the last 10 verses of Psalm 103 that they're chanted, but also not only chanted, you also add, there is in addition to these, each one of those verses about the Trinity and its relation, and the relationship between Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. That's basically it. It is not something like to be done every Saturday. It's not something to be done every Vesper service. It's not. It is not like, you know, something like it has to be done with the time, especially with the monastic influence, that how they want it, especially in vigils. And when I say vigils, not like the Russian kind of vigil on Saturday. When I'm saying vigils, those like 15, 16, 18, 20-hour long services, that way they combine Vespers, Compline, Orthros, and liturgy, like all together. And then, so it's usually left for these big time celebrations, like if you're, you know, the patron saint of the church, or the, you know, some great feast of the, like the Feast of the Cross or Feast of Transfiguration. It is not like something like, well, it's just something the Antiochians just like forbade or something. No, it's just a practice that it's not, I won't say not commonly done, but it's reserved for main feast, not like for just any Vesper service or any great Vesper service. And little by little, of course, these things, it has to be, you have to have a blessing. If a bishop present, that you have to have his blessing if you want to sing something like this. Or if you're doing it for, you know, you don't have the bishop, but you're celebrating your patron saint, the feast of the church, or you still have to take the blessing of the priest. You know, it is not something like somehow it was forbidden before, or now, you know, it's still forbidden. It just, and people didn't know about it, and it's musically, it's a little bit, I won't say it's easy, it's difficult, but it's not
intricate.
Yes, beautiful word, you know. So again, but just FYI for everybody.
The way that we can think about the Anaxandaria is that the Anaxandaria is like lasagna. And let me explain what I mean by that. Lasagna is my favorite food. And so my mother would make me lasagna every year on my birthday. If I had lasagna every single day of the week, then lasagna would no longer be special when I have it on my birthday. It would no longer be marking a special occasion. The church has certain things that we do that allow us to mark special occasions. If we were to do them all the time just because we like them, then all of a sudden they would lose their specialness, and it would not have the same, it would not be calling to mind the same thing all the time if we do it all the time.
You know, somebody just asked which service book is the Anaxandaria found in. Actually, you never, because it's never, that's why I said it is not part of a service. It is something that through the church history just got developed just to make it, like, again, in Greg said, the beautiful word, a special thing about the service that was added. So you actually only see it in music books. You literally see the text in music book, the Greek music books, the Arabic music book. I think I know the one version in English we have that it's accessible to everybody is from St. Anthony's Monastery. If you go to St. Anthony's Monastery's website, the Divine Liturgy, Divine Music Project, Vespers, it's actually in the special hymns in the bottom. that they included, and you see it in music, Western or Byzantine. But it's not like you would never see it in these books that we talked about in the beginning, Orologion,
Right.
Ephrologion, Oktoikos, Mineon. They're not there. It's just something that with the time, for like pietistic, celebrational reasons, that they were added, basically.
And to Father's point, they're included in special sections called special hymns, kind of like an appendix, something that is
Bravo. Bravo.
additional later. It's not for everyday use. It's something that is pointing to specialness. The selections from the first Kathisma would be included in that same type of section. They're not something that we do every single day. When I was at St. Vladimir's, where the OCA has that practice of singing the selections from the first Kathisma, it was not something that we sang every day. It was something that was reserved for vigil services and services for special feast days and special occasions.
I mean, we're talking more now, not monastic things, of course, but in monasteries, even if Byzantine style, they would still read those psalms at Vespers and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If you get a chance, if you have an opportunity to visit monasteries and convents that follow the Byzantine style, you would still, they're not chanted, usually not chanted in the Byzantine tradition unless there is a main feast, and not all of them, usually the first three, or, anyway, without going through a lot of details, I don't want to go through a lot of details of these, but they're usually read, definitely.
The basic structure, as we're talking about for the opening, would be found in the Orologian and Evchologian, with the portions that are for the chanter stand or for the readers coming from the Orologian, while the Great Litany would be coming from the Evchologian.
So there have been a couple questions that popped up that some of our people have noted that they have heard Blessed is the Man chanted in churches on Great Vespers for Saturday night. Should we stop doing that if we're currently doing that?
Absolutely not. I would not say stop. It is basically part of the service on Saturday to read, at least read, even if you don't want to sing them, to read Psalm 1 to 8. Actually, if really you want to go through the whole thing. But it's commonly done I would say in the old country and some churches here in the United States, at least in the Ethiopian churches, they might read only 1 to 3, Psalm 1, Psalm 2, Psalm 3 in all their entirety. We're not, again, I want to emphasize this, again and again. We're not here to tell you this is wrong and this is right, okay? And we're telling you what's out there. I won't say, if there's something really wrong, believe me, you'll hear it from your bishop or from your priest before you hear it from us. But a lot of churches, yes, somebody says in the comment that a lot of churches do say either chant or read Blessed is the Man, but also a lot don't. And I'm not saying if you go to a church and if they're doing Blessed is the Man, you kind of flip and say, why are you doing this? Is not an Ethiopian thing, And also the other, like if they're not doing it, it's like, why aren't you doing it? You should do this. There are two practices, in the end, in the parishes that we don't have like just the one exact specific one that we have to follow in a way.
And nothing is done in a vacuum. Nothing is done in a vacuum. Everything is done with consultation with your priest. So like Father John said, it's not for us to say what is right or what is wrong or what you should or shouldn't do. We're giving you the layout of variations you may see or you may not see. Stuff that might be out there. And if anything is going to happen in your parish practice, that's between you and your priest to figure out what is the best way to serve the services together.
Sure. Shall we go to the second point?
Let's go to the next point. So after the after the Great Actenia, typically we will then see the singing of Lord, I Have Cried. What this refers to is not just the actual hymn, Lord, I Have Cried, but it refers to Psalm 140 and the following verses. This is typically done, you'll see here in this coming Saturday's text, it says, Lord, I have cried in tone 6. The tone that we determine what tone to sing Lord, I have cried in, based on whatever the first stichira is going to be. And we're going to look at that word next and what the stichira are. Anything to add, Abuna?
No, God bless you. No.
So Father will explain what the stikira are and how they work, because he's much better at this than I am.
Oh, believe me, you're even so good. Okay, you know what, Greg, if you don't mind, can you stop sharing your screen and I can share it? I am going, because I want to write with my pen, hopefully, and people
Do
can
it.
see. Okay, give me 1 second. If I can do this, go like this, and now you're looking at my screen. So what Greg has actually have in the slide, what you're looking at now here. Oh Lord, I have cried in tone 6. So it happened. I mean, not like we. This Saturday is the beginning. This Vesper service is the beginning of tone 6 period week, and that's why, like Greg said, that's why it is in the tone 6. So Lord, I've cried is chanted in tone 6. Then all these verses, Saddle, Watch, O Lord, all of these are chanted in tone 6. And then here we see verse 10, and then we see, and this is what Greg was referring to as Tihira, those basically those hymns that you see, I just colored in or I point out in green. Those are called stihira, hymns, or if I can make it a little bit, hymns that come after a verse. A stichos in Greek is a verse. So here are hymns that are chanted actually after a verse. That's why you say verse 10, 9, 8, 7. On Saturday, for Great Vespers on a Saturday, and I'm talking when there's, it is not like a major feast of Christ involved, or a feast of the well, at least a feast of Christ. On a regular Saturday, like this coming one, there's still elements that we have to use from the season, but it's not like the day of a feast of Christ that falls on a Sunday. You have to sing for Saturday Vespers 10 hymns total. Why 10? I don't know, honestly, why it was at the end decided why 10. But will be good, to look, search if there's an answer, actually legit answer. But on Saturdays, we are called to chant 10 hymns. Those hymns, in general, come from two books. Definitely one, the Oktoikos, the book that Greg talked about 2 weeks ago, about the books that has all the hymns for the 8 tones for the week. Okay, and then the next book, it is going to be either the Mineon or Triodion or Pentecostarion. And sometimes actually, it cannot be Oktoikos or, always the Oktoikos, or at least on Saturday, but it cannot be Triodion and Pentecostarion because, well, one is before Lent and one for after Lent. It's like they're not gonna, come together. But at some point, you might have actually hymns, 10 hymns that you have to choose from 3 books: Oktoikos, Mineon, and even Triodion during Lent, because you want the Oktoikos, which is the tone of the week, the hymns for the tone of the week, the hymns of whatever date. So we have hymns that we should include for September 20th, which is this coming Sunday. And then let's say if we're in during Lent, well, let's say if April 10, Sunday, well, you have to include the saints from April 10, and then whichever week of the Triodion. Is it the feast of the St. Gregory Palamas Sunday during Lent, St. Mary of Egypt, all of these. So what we see here, it happened for this Sunday specifically. We definitely have those. The first hymn, if you see, it says for the resurrection. When it says for the resurrection in tone 6, that means these hymns are coming from the Oktoikos, the section of tone 6 of Saturday Vespers. Okay, so we have here 1, 2, 3, and we have 4 hymns. Okay, then we look and it says here for the Holy Cross in tone 2. Well, like Greg also mentioned in the beginning, at least in this week, we just celebrated yesterday the Feast of the Cross, or if not yesterday, on Sunday for practical reasons. But always any feast of the Lord, especially a feast of the Lord, we don't only just celebrated the day of. We kind of get ready for it before, sometimes a week, sometimes a month. We prepare for by chanting hymns related to that feast, and definitely hymns we chant after. Okay, so for a week for the Holy Cross, we'll have to sing hymns for it. And so for the Holy Cross in Tone 2, when the God Seer Moses long ago, by the way, I don't know if you can hear a helicopter, because I'm actually very close to Quantico. So Quantico is the Marine Corps, one of the biggest bases for the Marines. So probably they're just doing their practice or something. Anyway, that was like an advertisement, the break, Anyway, here we see the verse 6 and verse 5 and verse 4. It has a title for the Holy Cross in Tone 2. So because we're still in the period of celebrating the Feast of the Cross, those hymns were taken actually from the Mineon, from September 20th. And actually, it's because the feast is on the 14th, so you're technically celebrating, I'm pretty sure we celebrated for a week. I should have looked that up. I should know it anyway. It's for a week. So, actually, I will share with you too the September Book of Mineo. So let's see where we are in this. If I try to open it before just to make sure I'm kind of ready. Okay, here we go. This is literally, you're looking at the PDF of actually the actual book. The book itself, if you're looking at the book, it will look like this. So here it says September 20th, which happened this year is on a Sunday, falls on a Sunday. It says the Holy Great Martyr Eusthathios and those with him, his family, his wife and kids. But so here, look what it says. For Lord I have cried, we allow for the 6 verses and chant the following stikira. Well, between parentheses, why it's only 6? Because if on a day not Great Vespers, and if it's not Sunday, like Saturday Vespers, during a daily Vesper service, you only sing 6 hymns total after Lord I've cried, not 10 like on Saturday. Okay, so. But if you notice, of the feast, although it's September 20th, but it's, still the week that falls during of the feast. And then when you look at, we read the text, when the God Seer Moses long ago set a brazen serpent upon a pole, he completely destroyed. So these 3 hymns are actually coming from the Mineo. And then the next 3, which we see here, right here, for Saint Eusthathios and his family, also from the Mineon, because Saint Eusthathios is celebrated on September 20th. It's actually coming from the book of the Mineon, which is right here, of the saints. Thou was called by God above and not by a man. Okay, so again, on Saturday, we have to sing 10. Oh, well, now you tell me, well, why are we singing 4? They're usually, if you look at the Octoyukos book with 4 tone 6, for the hymns of For Lord I've Cried, there are 7. Why are we singing 4 of them? Why are we singing 3 of these and then 3 of these? There are a lot of rules that get involved depending on the feast or depending on the saint and his rank or her rank. The point is, on Great Vespers, especially on Saturday, you have to sing 10 hymns on Saturday. And the church come together and they agreed we're gonna sing 4 from the Octoyukos. That's why we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we're going to sing the 3 from the Holy Cross and the 3 from Saint Eusthathios. And that's why we have 4, 3, and 3, make it 10. Okay, did I miss anything? I know there are some questions, I think. I don't know, I couldn't see them yet because I'm sharing my screen.
We answered them in the chat.
Okay, can I know, will be good also to know if...
Is the Mineon available on this PDF format online?
No, this is only, like I said, no, it's, it's something you have to purchase, the book. It just happened that I have it just because I work a lot with the online liturgical guide. And we have a blessing, of course, preserving any copyright from HTM to do so. That's why it is not online. I don't think it would ever be online, honestly. Oh, somebody asked before, also, it's funny. I know Michael asked, why are the numbers in the reversed order? Because then it has them in regular order and it's very, Well, actually, um, it's a good question, Michael. Why is it in the reverse? Well, let's put it this way. It doesn't mean somehow this number one, like verse 10, somehow this is like the 10th hymn you're just taking the last one and putting it somehow the first one. No, this, O Christ, possessor of victory over Hades, it is actually the first hymn among the first seven, among the seven hymns from the Octoicos 4 tone 6. But the way, I'm pretty sure the way Peter, and I'll ask him why he did this, because in, well, um, I'm pretty sure, hopefully I can explain it in a good way, in a way, hopefully I can do a good job explaining it. Well, so here, I'm going to go back to this. If you're looking at these hymns, when the God seer Moses long ago and stuff, you don't see verses in between, right? You just see those hymns. When the God seer Moses, and then thou was clothed, shine thou, while yet in the bloom. You don't see verses. Okay, you do not see these verses. Where do you get these verses from? These verses are always brought from the Orologion book, from the book of Orologion, which the book that contains the fixed hymns that you're going to sing regardless what it is, regardless what the day is. So for Vespers, of course, every single Vespers, you're going to sing regardless how big or small or important. You are going to sing, Lord, I have cried, saddle watch, O Lord. You're going to say all these verses. And guess what? Even if you don't have to sing 10 hymns, you're still going to say these verses. So the way you see it in the Orologion, in this book, it will list all these verses exactly like this, like exactly how you see them here. Keep me from the snare which they have laid, let the wicked, yada, yada. And then when it comes to bring my soul, because the most that you're going to sing actually are 10 verses, except one day in the liturgical life. Only one day you'd sing 42 hymns, if I'm not mistaken. I'll leave it that for you to look for which one. But anyway, in general, the most you're going to sing are 10 verses. And those 10 in the Orologion book, it will actually mention to you, if you're singing 10 verses, here's the verse that you're gonna start with. So that's why, so you'll literally see written something like this: for 10 verses, if you're singing 10 stichir, or I should have said not 10, for 10 stichira, here's the verse that you're gonna start from. That after this verse, you need to stop and go to the book of Mineion or book of the Octoicos and get that text. And if you're chanting, let's say, only 9 verses that night, or 6 verses, or whatever it is, it will tell you here if you have 6 verses to chant, here's the 6th verse that, so I think that's why it's written, or at least Peter put them like this in reversed order. I don't know, I'm sorry if I didn't explain it, if doesn't, is just so when you, let me see, and I'm just going to try this one more thing, and then I'll give up, and I'll apologize if I don't answer the question very well. So, well, here you go. You have those hymns, right? Here are the hymns that you're going to sing. Those, let's say, a Vesper service that you have 6 hymns, okay? I look at the book, I see those 6 hymns that I need to chant. Okay, but which verse? And I have a different book that only lists, it is only listing the verses, those verses. Like, oops, sorry, that's not what I meant. But it's only listing these verses. The book, the Orologion will only list these, just nothing else. Bring my soul out of prison, then the righteous shall wait for me out of the depths. So how do I know which verse I have to start from? Well, how many hymns do I have here? I have one, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 hymns to chant. So which verse I would start on? Well, I have to start from the bottom. Well, 1, this is the last verse. I want to make sure the 6th hymn I'm going to sing is to coincide with the last verse of Lord I've Cried. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So that's why in the, that's why it's written like in reverse. So in the Orologion, it will say here, if you're chanting 6 verses, start at this verse. I don't know. I'm sorry. Like I have to show you in books, and I don't know. Greg, if you can.
It's basically to summarize what Father is saying is
In a much better way.
If you start with number 1 as being the first hymn and you only have 6, then number 1 has to change. If you start with number 10, then 10 is always the same number 10 and counting backwards. And 6 is always the same number 6 and counting backwards. So it's a way to see things a little bit differently so that we're always on the same, ironically, page, and make sure that we're always starting with the right verse so that we have the right verse assigned to the right stikira. Does that make sense? But putting all of that together between the two of us, does that help answer your question?
There were a couple quick questions from the chat. I wanted to go ahead and throw those out there.
Sure.
One question asking, is the assignment of the various tones for each portion of the service the same across all jurisdictions?
Yes.
Yes, definitely.
For these hymns, yeah.
Yes. Okay. So even if you go to any world, at least, even in the Russian, even if they have a different, system of tones, but they still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 7, 8. But at least in the Byzantine world, regardless where you go in the world, if if it says here tone 6, everybody's following the same order. Period. This is tone 6, hymns of tone 6. Those the hymns of the cross in tone 2. Even if you go to I don't know, Mozambique, I don't know if it's Zambia, whatever, any word like Orthodox church that in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of God only knows where. But if it's used in the Byzantine tradition, definitely, and it has the books, you'll see it in tone 2, and you're going to see these hymns in tone 4. That's and yes.
I was just going to say, though, I didn't mean to interrupt that. The other question that we had, you said that for the Sunday, for the weekend, for Saturday night and Sunday, there are 10 stikira. The first 4 were being for the resurrection. In this example, 3 for the cross, and then 3 from the Meneon for the day of the year.
Yes.
But then the other question was, this question was about the Triodion. And so when we're in the Triodian season, we still have 4 for the resurrection, 3 from the Triodian, and 3 from the...
Here's the thing, number-wise, things might be different. Number-wise, depending on the specific Sunday, depending on the specific Sunday, depending on whose saints we're celebrating, it might be different. That's why there's a whole other system that you have to learn, and we just cannot just hammer you with all of it here. The point is that what you need to know is you will have, let's say in the Triodion period, you will have hymns from the Octoikos, depending if it's 4 or 5, or it might be 3. Then hymns from the Triodion, if it's the Publican and Pharisee Sunday, if it's the Prodigal Son, if it's the Meat Fairs, Sunday of Orthodoxy, there are specific hymns that you're going to sing, maybe 1, maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe 4. And then you're going to have ones, 2 or 3 or 4 for whoever saint is celebrated that day. So it happens for September 20th. The rule is 4 for the resurrection, 3 for the cross, and 3 for Saint Eustathios. Okay? The following Saturday, if there's nothing going on, there's nothing important, you're going to see actually 7 for the resurrection, 7, literally 7, or 6, depending which practice, and then 4 for the Mineon for whatever saint. So I cannot, what you see in here, well, this 4-3-3 is not it's just only specific, it's only specific for that September 20th, because the season, the liturgical season, it happened that this is the week for the cross, that you still have to chant things for the cross, and the rank of Saint Eustathios. Okay, again, what we're learning is, maybe 20% of what you only
Exists.
exist, and then there are the 80% that it's just years and years of things that you get to see. How do you learn? Which one you have to, for the books. Should we do for the triodion and things? There are actually books in Greek and Arabic, of course, but in English, the best that we can have for now is Bishop Dimitri, who's one of our retired hierarchs, who translated actually the Typikon, the book of rules that tells you what to do and what not to do and how many pieces depending on the feast and depending on when it falls. It's actually what I would say 75% of what we rely on now, or at least what we do. Basically, we do like 75% of what he's done, translated, and is offering us. In these kind of books, the Typikon book, this is where you learn how many exact hymn you should have depending on the day, on the season, on the rank of the saint, and all of these things. Okay, so again, it's not here for this reason. We have 4, 3, and 3 for this because it's September 20th. Okay.
And Cal, to finish your follow-up question with in the Byzantine world or the whole world, what Chris is writing is awesome. There are always exceptions, but we're talking about an 8-week cycle that is based on 8 tones. So it doesn't matter if you're in the Byzantine or in the Slavic practice. There are still systems of 8 tones. Those 8 tones might sound different, but there are still those same 8 tones. So when they come to tomorrow, Saturday night's Vespers service, it doesn't matter if you're in a Slavic church or if you are in the Byzantine church, you are still celebrating Vespers in tone 6. Tone 6 might sound different depending on where you are and what music they're using. And it might even sound different within the Slavic practice, but the point is it's tone 6. The hymns of the feast are going to be in second mode, what Father John has right on his screen now. And they are even going to follow that prosomia, which is a special hymn, which, to answer your question, Nicholas, there are books out there that will teach you what those special hymns are so that you can then apply, as you learn them, you can apply things to them. And Father John can say better where to get a good one is. But even in Slavic practice, they might even follow those same prosomia, but they have their own versions of those prosomia. Does that make sense? Mode is the same as tone. Yes, Catherine.
Yes. Sorry.
That term gets used interchangeably. But the point is that we are in tone 6 this coming Saturday. Tone 6 is tone 6. And so we have hymns that go with tone 6. We have hymns for the Feast of the Cross, which happen to be in tone 2. But the point is that we're singing the hymns for the Feast of the Cross. And same with Saint Eusthathios. This service that we're talking about for this coming Saturday is Vespers for September 20th, 2020. September 20th, 2021 is going to be different.
Because it's not Sunday.
Because it's not going to be Sunday. It might be a different tone of the week, depending on when. All of that stuff, that's why we have the Typikon that shows us how we put all of these things together. We're just looking at this as the context to understand generally how Vespers is working.
And hopefully, people get to see things like this and hear us, hear what we have to say, and then say, well, they want to explore more. And, honestly, again, and I said it, a couple of weeks ago, this is a, what we have in our hand, the online liturgical guide. Actually, there are only 2 organizations, if I can say, that offer this for the whole English world, period. The Antiochian Archdiocese and a group, another one that's not associated with its jurisdiction, although it does Greek and English, Ages Initiatives that offer these things. And honestly, I always say it is a double-edged sword, but actually there's a lot of, good things about these, putting these things together and bringing them. There's a lot of work that come, to bring these together. It's literally offering you the service on a plate of, I don't know,
hummus.
Diamond. Hummus. Oh, now you made me hungry. Hummus is more precious than diamond for me, of course. A lot of Arabs too. But it's on a plate of, I don't know, diamond or whatever the most expensive, jewel, or rock. But again, there is so much, and hopefully this, just to tell you, there's so much that and that goes on behind the scenes to put stuff like this, and the church is very wise to take in consideration. Nothing like here is put just like randomly. Some bishop rolled out of bread, upset at his parish the night before, or his archdiocese or whatever, and tried to do this like felt like he's going to do it like this, or somebody who just people who took it seriously, studied it to pay respect and glorify everybody from God, from to Christ, to the saints, accordingly, with respect to all of them, according to their rank and their importance in the church, if I can say.
So, Father, one quick comment.
Yes, sir.
There was a question about where to find the different pieces of music. Just if you note on the liturgical guide that is being broadcast right now, anything that is in that light blue color, the titles, those are actually hyperlinks that will take you directly to the music that the Antiochian Archdiocese has put together for us. So yeah, thank you, Father. So the music is there, it's available. It's not the when he took thee, it's when the God seer Moses long ago example. So it's actually the music that you will be singing or chanting during this service.
Yes, I mean, and I know somebody asked, I think Nicholas asked, where can we find these original melodies? Well, I'm not going to go too much into details, like different versions of those original melodies, although it will freak out some people, like, what do you mean? What do you mean that they're different versions and it's an original melody? But anyway, there are little variation. But honestly, I can't, I mean, there is a book for the Holy Transfiguration Monastery, but and we use some of the original melodies they have, but I don't like to rely much about them because they were written at a very long time ago, where even the monks who wrote it based their knowledge, or they wrote these hymns not studying anything Byzantine. They literally listened to like some individuals singing these things, and they just noted them in Western. One of the most, I would say, accurate ones, it's actually not for sale anymore. Father Seraphim Didis, the guy who started Aegis Initiative, for people who know, basically the online liturgical guide that used by a lot of the Greek churches. And he actually in 2005 or 2000, around that time, he issued a booklet and a CD of, I think, the best 20 or the most common 28 of them or 30 of them or so. I need to check with him if that's something that we can post these recordings online. I know he's not selling them anymore. It's not like he's expecting money out of it, but that's why we're trying to have them in music. And that's like Chris Howard said, we have the hyperlinks for them, so you can press on it, and at least if you read music, you can read it. But God willing, we've said that before, once we're done in the Byzantine committee working on making available the music for the important pieces of the whole year, this is our next project, is to provide recordings for every single piece of music. But you have to bear with us a little bit. We're 4 or 5 people, but also none of us is full-time on these things, in the end. It's not like we're going to open it to like 500 people to join, but anyway, the point is, just bear with us a little bit, and then God willing, we'll do it. If anybody has specific ones that really need to know about some recordings, feel free to email me, either I'm still Deacon John at Antiochian.org, either DN John or my secular name, which is, I think most people like. Anyway, I'll write it at the end if anybody's into, actually, or Chris can type it maybe in rasemelmasih@gmail.com. If somebody's interested, to have those recordings, I can share them. Okay, Greg, anything else, or should we continue? And you want me to stop sharing?
I think we should go on.
Okay, let me stop sharing, and then you can share yours.
Okay. So moving on to the next portion, after we sing these, we close out Lord, I Have Cried with the singing of the Doxasticon and the Dogmaticon, or the Dogmatic Theotokion, you might see it listed, or Theotokion as you see it listed right here. And what that is These are both hymns that literally, voxastikon just refers to a hymn that follows glory to the Father and to the Son and to the Holy Spirit. And typically is, as you see here, going to be for Saint Eustathios because
of his rank.
Because of his rank as a saint. You see, that's the wrong line to use as well. And you see Saint Eustathios there. And then you also see this word, Theotokion, which you might also see as dogmaticon, as we've listed it, which are, especially on Saturday night Vespers, coming from the Oktoikos, and they talk to us about the Theotokos in a way that is explaining to us who she is and her relationship to Christ. Is that a fair way to say that, Abuna?
Yes.
They make theological statements.
Yes, but also, just to add, it is also in it, you learn about the relationship of the Trinity too. So that's why it's dogma from doctrines. So in this, just looking at the text that Greg just shared with us, so of course it is a dogmaticon, so it has to talk about the Theotokos, but also involving, of course, like who shall not beautify thee, most holy virgin. Here's your hint that is for the Theotokos, but also look, yeah, exactly, for the only Son rising timelessly from the Father. Look, all these like dogmatic proclamations. Himself did become incarnate from thee. He who, while God by nature, became for our sakes man by nature, not divided into two persons, but known by two natures, without mixture or confusion. This was ecumenical council teaching. This is not just like, a hymn that just talks like, oh, the saint, spent his life, in torture and he was tortured. It's just, those are beautiful. This one, you can learn this about the dogma of the church before even you have to go to seminary. You don't even need to go to the seminary to learn these things. But just being at the chant stand or listening, paying attention to the words that you can learn. That's why they were called the dogmatica or the dogmaticon, hymns that actually teach about the dogmas of the church. But only those particular hymns that they're chanted at the end of Lord I Have Cried, it's called dogmaticon. No else ones. So we're gonna see a glory at the end of Vespers. It is not called dogmaticon. It will still be called doxastikon or Theotokion if it talks about the Theotokos, but it will not be called dogmaticon, this dogmatic glory or dogmatic Theotokion. The dogmatic Theotokion is specifically for the Lord I've Cried, and it's usually for each of the 8 modes. This one is because the week of tone 6, we have tone 6, tone 7. We're going to have next Saturday, if you look for next Saturday Vespers, you're going to see here it says Theotokion for the resurrection in tone 7. It will have a different text that is chanted in tone 7. And when you read the text, you'll see how you're going to learn a lot about the relationship of the Father, Son, or the nature of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. And of course, while talking a little bit about the Theotokos too.
Yeah. And Father brings up a good point. The hymnography of the church is there to teach us. The services, by their nature, are there to teach us. So we really need to pay careful attention to, what we're singing, so that it's done in a way that can be taught and can be didactic for people to understand what's going on and know who the Theotokos is and know who Christ is and understand their relationship and learn about the life of, for example, Saint Eustathios and his family and how that can be applied to our life. There's so much richness that goes on throughout these things. As we looked at earlier, all of these hymns come from a combination of the Orologian, the Oktoikos, the Menaian, the Triodian, and the Pentecostarian. We never see the Triodian and the Pentecostarian together. Anything else on Lord I Have Cried, that section?
If you don't mind, Greg, can you go back to the other one, the section, the text of the glory in both now?
Yes.
It happens because of the rank of Saint Eustathios that we have a hymn for the glory, like a specific hymn for glory, and then another one for the Theotokos. In Feast of Christ or the Theotokos, you're just going to have a combined one, just one hymn that talks either about the Christ and the whatever feast, or about the Theotokos, whichever feast, it's chanted. Always, always, as a rule of thumb, regardless how ranked is the saint that we're celebrating, in the end of the day, all these saints and all these festivals, feasts that we celebrate is basically to take us or to bring us closer to God. So in the end of the day, the last thing is about talking about Christ. Okay. So that's why every hymn has to finish with you can't just finish Vespers or like finish the first part of Vespers or the end of Holy God. Oh Lord, I've cried, just with the hymn of Saint Eustatius. He's not the end. The end is Christ and the Theotokos anyway. Well, anyway, you're
So
never
they,
talking about the Theotokos without talking about Christ anyway. Like there's just, so that's why, in some cases, like the following week, if you have hymns only, you don't need to have a doxasticon for the saints celebrated. You might just have one combined glory both now, and it would still be called the doxasticon of the dogmaticon.
Beautiful.
Okay. Or during a regular Vespers or daily Vespers, you might not have, if there's nothing going on, nothing important or no feast, big feast, you're just going to have one hymn that usually talks about the Theotokion, about the Theotokos and Christ. Okay.
Coming from the Octoikos typically.
Or
and that hymn,
or Mineum.
Or Mineum. But those hymns are not dogmatic Theotokia. They are not dogmatica. The only dogmatica are those hymns which are for Saturday night Vespers in each of the 8 nights. Next, while that hymn is being sung, we see that the clergy start to get moving and they start to be getting things ready. Father, would you like to tell us a little bit about what's going on with the entrance?
The entrance, well, during a great Vespers, we always expect there's an entrance. What does that mean? It's an entrance. It's an exit, then an entrance in a way. Like, the clergy step outside the altar. They do like a small procession, like the little entrance that we have usually during the liturgy, while the choir or the chanters are singing the last hymn, which is in our case for this coming Saturday, the both now and ever, the dogmaticon, the dogmatic Theotokion or the dogmatic glory. The clergy will get ready to leave the altar and go outside in a kind of procession and stand in the solea or right in front of the altar, waiting on the choir to finish singing whatever appointed glory or Theotokion. And then when they're sung, there's the priest usually come out with the censer, and then or if there's a deacon, they say, "Wisdom, let us attend," and then we sing a very common, very important hymn and very popular, "O Gladsome Light." Did I miss anything, Greg? Well, only one thing.
Not a thing.
Whenever you have a daily Vespers, there's no entrance, so you literally go. You sing the glory or the both now or whatever the glory is appointed, and that's it. The priest and the clergy stay inside the altar. They do not come outside. Okay, only this procession or this entrance is done at great Vespers. Okay,
and in the situations where you wouldn't see that procession being done, we also would not sing the hymn that follows, "O Gladsome Light." We would simply read "O Gladsome Light." Before moving on. And "O Gladsome Light" is, as Father said, this very common, very beautiful. It's one of my favorite. It's one of the oldest hymns that we have in the church. It's typically done in the second mode, unless we do the choral music, in which they have special settings for that hymn. It's sung as the sun sets, and the lamps are lit at this point, because it's this whole interplay between the sun, though the light of the actual day is going down, we have our sun, that is Christ, that is rising at that moment. So we light the lamps. During the reading of Psalm 103, there are 7 prayers that are called the prayers at the lighting of the lamp that the priest would be doing while that psalm is being read, and at this point we would light all of those lamps. In modern parlance, that's the time when we turn the lights up. we might have the lights dim up to this point, and then we turn the lights up with the words, now that we have come to the setting of the sun, we behold the evening light. And in beholding that light, we hymn Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, God. And you know, these statements that are being made immediately following the statements that are being made in the hymnography that we just spoke about, the interplay and how everything is woven and working together is absolutely beautiful.
Beautiful. Like Greg said, it's one of our earliest hymns that actually we still use till today. It is from the late 3rd century, early 4th century, contributed to actually Saint or Bishop Athenogenes, Athenogenes. He's celebrated on July 16th. Contributed, legend. You know, I mean, we don't know for sure, but and like Greg said, it's the lamb lighting hymn. Well, one thing I just want to say, it's a general thing. When we say, you know, we said it's in tone 2. That does not mean that the way we sing it now, oh, gladsome light of the holy glory, okay? Not this exact same melody that it was sung 1700 or 1600 years ago, okay? Yes, for sure, if a hymn that says now, you know, it's in tone 2, that means always been chanted in tone 2 from its conception, but it doesn't mean, okay, it does not mean that it's the same way now tone 2 it is done. You know, through history, the tones, the sound of those tones and modes changed in a way. We still call, you know, tone 1 did not sound 500 or 700, 800 years ago the same way it sounds now. And most likely it's not going to sound the same way 200 years from now or 500 years from now. That's something just to keep in mind. But if a hymn that says tone 2 or tone 1 or tone 5, that means from its conception it was tone 2, tone 5, or tone 2, you know. Okay, that's, you know, that's, I think we'll conclude, you know, our, you know, first session. Somebody asked a question, who ought to light the candles during the gladsome light? It's not like there is a specific role, you know what I mean? Now it's just either somebody will flick the lights, you know, on, or you know, or back in monasteries or old monasteries, they might just have candles, and somebody from the altar might light the candles. And if you don't put the candles on, or the light on, it's not the end of the world. It's not like it says in the rubrics that you have to put the light on. It's just something, just like you know, an expression of like, oh, it's about the light, let's put those light on and make it shine. But there's no rubric like specific, like make sure somebody's standing by the candles, you know, to light them at this word, you know, specifically. Like this, it just became, I don't know what would be a better word to describe that. It just, that's a practice that people, you know,
Just, yeah, it's just a small tradition practice that happens, but you might see at a monastery them light everything and really go all out with how they're lighting everything. And sometimes they even smack the chandeliers and
actually
make them roll. And
I was going actually to say, you have to look for Pascha, you know, see if Pascha, or it's not Pascha, every time you have the praises chanted at a liturgy at a monasteries, every time you say, let every breath praise the Lord, or let everything praise the Lord, they literally shake the candeliers and all, like the, you know, the chandeliers and stuff, you know. It's a practice. It's not like on a rubrics that you have to do that. And it just, you know, anyway. Do you guys have any other questions? I know it's not 10 o'clock, you know, but definitely if you have any questions, at least for this part, we wanted to cover this first part, because the second part, it will get a little bit more complicated. There are so many things that get involved in things. And even if things get a little bit you get overwhelmed with, that's fine. Email us, you know, ask questions on Facebook, email us to the department. That's what we're here for. But definitely one thing to know, there are so many things to, you know, so many things, and we're trying to, you know, do our best with the short time we have to like offer. But hopefully, you know, of any, you know, hopefully we are of any, you know, good help. Any questions or? Very good.
Thank you all for being with us, and thank you all for participating. We look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks. Anything to wrap up, Chris or Marina?
I just wanted to remind all of you that next Wednesday, not tomorrow, but the following week, is Music Theory 102, which is going to delve into key signatures and how to understand what the key signatures mean and in relationship to our music, so that you can then have an easier time pitching or no understanding if just from what you're seeing, what the music is going to sound like. And Nancy Long is here with us. She is the other teacher that's going to be working with me. This is going to be specifically for Western notation. And I think you'll enjoy it. We have a lot of fun. We had a really good class last time, and we're planning to do the same. Thank you all for being here with us. Thank you, Father John, and thank you, Greg and Chris Howard, for being with us. We sure appreciate you doing this. This is a really wonderful opportunity for all of us to be able to have lots of minutia done on things that sometimes we don't really know why we're doing them. We just do them because we're told. So that's a really lovely thing for us to do. I do have a question. Did you say that you were right beside Quantico?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. That's pretty cool. So, all right. Chris Howard, have anything for the good of the group?
Greg has something to say, I think.
I just wanted to
I
point
was
out real
just saying
quick.
good night.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out real quick, for those of you who are not on our private Facebook group, if you are on Facebook, I put a link in the chat for our private group. If you go to that link and click on it and then request to become a member, we will accept you into the group. And all of these sessions are posted there so that you can find sessions of previous weeks. We are sending them via email as well, but you know, it's easier to lose track of an email than it is to, if you just go to the Facebook group, it's physically all there and right there for you. It's a great communication tool for us. We can send out reminders. So we want to get as many people on it as we can. And if you're not on the mailing list, the emailing list, you will be now, because when you registered, we got your email address, and we'll add you on there. If you want to forward that email when it comes in every week, if you want to forward that to other people, you know, we're happy to have anybody on our groups as long as they have some connection to Orthodoxy and or sacred music. We try not to have too many randoms on our Facebook group. So we do actually check just to make sure that people are either connected with one of you guys, or if they're they have some connection to a church or something Orthodox on their Facebook post. But thank you guys. Anybody else have anything to mention? So it does not appear. Thanks for everybody for coming.
God bless you.
Thank you all. Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
Have a good night, everybody.